A lot of injuries in that class. How hard does that make it to kind of evaluate the group of young players you brought in?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question to ask. The idea of the rookie contributions, it's a fun one to talk through, and obviously as we think back to sort of our priorities heading into the draft and really where we wanted to place our points of emphasis, it's certainly a clear sign when you wrap up a season and have double-digit rookies take either an offense or defensive snap throughout the course of a season that you can feel good about sort of the experience heading into year two. Beyond that, obviously, injuries are something that take place over the course of a natural season, right? And for it to happen to a few of our rookies over the course of this first year is on a level disappointing. Would have loved to see more, and obviously with Travis having gotten to a place mid-season where he felt like he was starting to peak and really make a real dent, and the plan for post-bye was to continue to enhance that. Tough not to be able to see that come to life down the backstretch. With Caleb, obviously the fact that he never got a chance to even step on the grass for a regular season game was not ideal, but both of those guys are attacking their rehab process in the way that you would expect, and really looking forward to what their future holds for us and really their place on the football team into 2026 and beyond. Obviously with Wyatt having experienced an injury in preseason game 3 that impacted the first half of his season, and by the end of it being able to see levels of his game take steps was really a positive sign. And beyond that, obviously got some contributions from day 3 players, which is always a helpful piece to the puzzle. And in particular with Jalen McLeod, not unlike Caleb, not getting a chance to step on the grass was not ideal, but nonetheless getting experience and taking steps throughout his recovery process in a way that makes you feel optimistic about what the future holds for him. And then beyond just the draft selections themselves, to get contributions from undrafted college free agents like we did in 2 defensive ends was certainly cause for optimism, especially knowing that was not just through special teams, but also on the defensive side of the ball. It's not easy to find people at that position in particular in undrafted college free agency, so to walk away with 2, got to give a lot of credit to our coaching staff and our scouting staff who worked through the undrafted college free agent committee process to identify those players and be able to walk away with signing them. And that's a collaborative effort that brings that to life, and obviously our coaches and support staff to be able to get those guys in a place to be able to play, and those 2 individually to be able to prepare in the right ways as rookies by end of season to really have real roles. And obviously beyond that, a couple different guys who started on a practice squad and were either elevated at different points or ultimately brought to the 53-man roster through undrafted college free agency is a really good sign for the future and really our process as a whole. But obviously when it involves a few different players with injuries, it's something that has to be thought through a little bit differently. But nonetheless, at this point, there's plenty of room for optimism.
Hey, James, you guys were 7th in quarterback pressures as a pass rush, but 27th at sacks. What kind of offseason priority is it to get that cranked up, and particularly in a playoff game like on Sunday?
And that's a cool question because, sacks in particular are never a true indicator. Pressures are probably a better indicator of whether or not you're impacting the QB. I think the way in which our scheme will evolve will have a role in how we address it from a personnel standpoint. But clearly, I think we saw by season's end that there was an uptick. What may have not necessarily been a superpower of our defense on the front end of the season became more impactful by season's end. And I think we saw evolution of usage. And I do expect that our scheme itself will evolve and not necessarily be the exact same. But, there's going to be some preliminary discussions that take place over the course of the latter weeks in January. Our coaching staff won't return until mid-February, at which point we'll dive into that stuff in greater detail.
Back to Hunter for both of you guys. How is his rehab doing, and what is the plan for him moving forward?
Yeah, I think very fair to say that his rehab process is going as expected, and he's hitting it hard. And, obviously the joy that he brings to just the everyday operation is still something that permeates throughout the space that he enters. And beyond that and the role that he'll play, we still expect him to play on both sides of the ball. Obviously, you can take a peek at expiring contracts on our roster and which side of the ball has more. Obviously, at this point, walking into the offseason, corner is a position that we have a few guys who are on expiring contracts. So by default, you can expect there to be a higher emphasis on his placement. I think from Liam's perspective, he can share it, but the steps that he was taking by the midpoint of the season really made us feel good about what the back half of the year was going to be on both sides of the ball and what that impact was going to look like, being a feature point on offense and an impact player on defense. It was just disappointing timing, but nonetheless feel good about where we are heading into this offseason and what next year should hold.
Hey, Liam, you said before you try not to put like a number in mind for the team. You won 13 wins this season. Was there a moment early in the season, training camp or something, where you start kind of looking and saying, I kind of like this group, you got a chance to maybe do something?
Yeah, I think you can point to a number of different times throughout training camp that you felt like the team was responding to the message. They were responding to challenges. They were practicing their asses off. Every day that we kind of went out on the grass and competed, these guys continued to elevate and set new standards. And so you feel good about the way that they're responding. And you kind of always look to, when is the drop-off going to happen throughout training camp and early in the season, and you didn't really sense that. You didn't feel that too often. And so you feel like you've got a group that is at least on the right path. And what that equals and what that comes out to be from a win-loss standpoint, you never know. But you're excited. You're excited about working with the group and how they're going to continue to respond and play on Sundays. And so you did feel it at an early part of the season in terms of, all right, we're not afraid to go compete with the best. We're going to go play any place, anytime, anywhere, and see what those results are. So I was proud about the group early on, and you just kind of see what it looks like throughout the midway through the season and keep evaluating.
Liam, do you look at Travis going into next year as wide receiver one or number one wide receiver? And how do you think your guys' plan for him and getting him ready helped? Or where does that need work, or were you pleased with it?
Yeah, I think it's all part of this evaluation process. I never really look at anybody as like one or two or three. It's just like, who do we have on the roster that's going to be active and that we can continue to work with and prepare through the off-season program with. Obviously, for him right now, it's about getting his rehab right and diving in mentally because of some of the limitations we'll have throughout the off-season program. But I'm really excited about getting back to work with Travis and continue that evolution and see what that looks like. And I'm going to take a few of these weeks here to look at that schedule and see what any of those changes or adaptations we may need to make.
Question for both. Just in terms of this season, sort of reflecting on obviously the sting of the loss, but also the success that you guys had, 13 wins. How did that sort of align with your overall long-term vision for what Jaguars football should look like?
Yeah, that's a fun one. The desired result obviously wasn't there, but there's a lot of pride in the process. I think you talk about reflection, and that's an ongoing piece to the puzzle. It's never ending, and obviously we were doing that along the way. We're doing it moving forward, but as I think back to where we were this time last year, Liam was probably just embarking on the interview process. I wasn't even considering it as an option. There were plenty of people in Jacksonville that had never heard my name, and I think the fact that we got a longer runway right here is going to be a luxury, right? And as we think about what myself, Liam, Tony were able to do with a vision and be able to execute that, raising the floor of the football team, knowing that when you think back to 2024, there was plenty of talent to keep, close games. But we needed to raise the floor and inject intangibles into the football team so that we could close games. And to be able to see that come to fruition is certainly something that we can take some pride in, and being able to talk through and engineer what this football team looks like moving forward and where our points of emphasis need to be is certainly something we're having those early discussions around, and need to continue to dive deeper into what that actually looks like. But looking forward through that, seeing proof of concept as a version of fulfillment, knowing that, our whole message and really what was so great is Liam's message was absorbed by our players. It was believed by our players, but it was going 1-0. And, to be able to say, hey, looking right here, we need to pour in simply to our process, not worry so much about the results and find fulfillment there, knowing that regardless of if we win a Super Bowl or if we don't, that ball is rolling back down to the bottom of the hill and we got to start all the way over.
Liam and James, how much, Brian Thomas Jr., how much do you view him as a part of this thing in the long term? And also, how much more can you get out of him with his skill set and as a 23-year-old player?
I'm glad you asked that, and I think I can point back to D-Rock's question about wide receiver one. The cool thing about our offensive system, and this is my observation, Liam can dive into the details, is each and every game presents a different problem for an opponent. You never know who it is that's going to pop off. You look back at sort of the output of the collective. We had 3 receivers go over 700 yards. That's abnormal. That's not typical. To be able to spread the wealth, so to speak, is a really positive thing. And with Jacoby's arrival, it certainly allowed BT to continue to level up in areas that fit within the system itself, that were fit for his skill set, and allowed him to be the best version of himself down that back stretch of the season. I think beyond that, you saw even in Parker Washington, his play, be able to take steps with opportunities. And, that was showing itself throughout the course of the offseason program and training camp. Training camp didn't lie to us this time around. Sometimes those are things that you question. Hey, is this a real reflection of what we'll see come regular season? And with Parker Washington, that was no fraudulent exposure. That was an accurate interpretation. And when his op presented itself, he certainly stepped up and helped our cause. But I think, to your point, BT in particular, when you were talking a little bit about Travis being wide receiver one, the wide receiver one doesn't necessarily exist in the system in the way that you would typically feel like it might. And Liam can obviously dive into the nuances as needed. But
Liam, do you see a lot of growth in him? You guys developed so many guys. You saw a lot of great play. He was one that we saw a drop off from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think you point to wins and losses as really what comes down to. And when you're a part of a team that wins, typically that wealth is shared. And so it's never truly going to be about one player. I continue to pour into every single one of these guys, as will Edgar Bennett, and as will Grant, and as will our entire staff, to continue to pour into guys to try to get the most out of them, to help our team win as many games as humanly possible. And BT will 100% be a part of that.
Coach, how important is it, like, for this year? I heard you say you got to go on to the next play, whether it's good or bad. And there's a lot about this year that was foundational. Is it a challenge to you to carry that over, but to let the team know not one first down or touchdown or 13 wins is gonna, we got to start this thing all over again?
Yeah, that is very fair. That was the message to the team on Monday. Was extremely proud of a lot of the things that we were able to accomplish. Very proud of their response to adversity and to that 1-0 message and that next play mentality. And now the real work is here to where we have to go and reload it. We're not going to just stand here and say, man, we're just going to redo it all with all the same, because I got us 13 wins and knocked out of the playoffs in the first round. So clearly was not good enough for the full end of the season standard. But 31 other teams were having a similar conversation, and they will have a similar conversation. And so that's the beautiful part about this profession and the challenge that it brings, is that, every year's a new year, every team's a new team, and that's what this offseason will be able to provide. And so that's what the offseason will be for, is getting to know this new team, what it looks like, with the message being, hey, we got to continue to go 1-0 each week and play the next play.
Liam, how encouraged were you with Trevor Lawrence's growth this season, and what was your message to him in terms of what you'd like to see him emphasize this offseason?
Yeah, I haven't had any of those conversations yet. It's been about a little bit of appreciation, just talk to him briefly about how much I appreciated his work this season, his trust, the growth that he did make, his openness to be coached and coached hard. And I think he'd be one of the first ones to tell you there's a lot of work to continue to do and to be done. And so that's what we'll look at for these next few weeks, is our coaching staff will, when we get back into the building, all right, what's the three better, three best that we want to end up providing for each player specifically, and have some of those conversations when we get back in the building.
James, how impressed were you with Lawrence over the last half of the season?
Yeah, I was really impressed. I think, back to the off-season program, there was a learning curve, obviously, and the one thing that was very clear throughout that sort of window of the cycle was his interest in making sure the operation was clean. And he was going through step by step to make sure that he was learning the right way and pouring in the right way. And you could see a turn in the second week of training camp where he began not just learning but testing, right? Testing what could work, what could fit, all those sorts of things. So that was kind of a cool evolution over the course of the off season, and then into the regular season. Like, just generally zooming out away from just Trevor, it's the idea that teams can be built over the course of an off season is true, but the good ones, the great ones, they evolve over the course of the regular season. And you saw that evolution in Trevor over the course of the regular season as you compare the first quarter to the second quarter to first half to second half. There was a clear uptick in command, control, comfort, playmaking. All that stuff jumped out in a real way, and look forward to being able to have him carry that momentum into the offseason here and continue to dive into what Liam and our coaching staff would call three better, three best, which is a very pointed off-season attack.
James, Devin Lloyd was a player who maybe hadn't found his role in two previous defensive schemes here, second team All-Pro this year, contract year. What is the evaluation of him moving forward?
Man, how cool was that, right? Such an impactful season. What he meant to our end result was certainly notable. The way in which he operated on a daily, weekly basis was really cool to watch and observe. He committed himself to being the best version. The connection between him, the coaching staff was real. He was being deployed in the right ways. He felt confident in the ways that he was doing it from both defense and special teams. Like, you're talking about a guy that is playing at an all-pro level on defense but is running down on kickoff every time we score and making plays for us. So extremely happy for Devin and his production this season and finding real footing in a way that aligned with what he knew he could be. Look forward to working through the off-season process with our coaching staff and everyone else to determine what's best for everybody and seeing if there's something to be done. But nonetheless, the role that he had and what we did this season was real, and I think it was very vivid for all to see.
Another player on the defensive side of the ball kind of falls in a similar category, and obviously once the trade was made for Tyson for Greg was Montaric Brown. What did you see from Buster that validated making that move to give him more exposure, also in a contract year on the outside, and what does his future look like?
Yeah, that was another one that's in alignment with Parker Washington. What you saw in the off-season program and in training camp was authentic. It was real. He was getting his hand on the ball endlessly. His skill set aligned with the scheme in a true form. And I think that probably from last season to this season was something that many could understand on their own, but he's very comfortable operating in it. He's very effective in it. I think that certainly gave us the confidence. His mode of operation is one of trust, and I think that gives a coaching staff certainly a willingness to give it an attempt, even if walking into the season or looking outward in, you may not have identified Buster as being a starting cornerback or not. And certainly proud, just like with Devin, to see his output continue to climb over the course of the season and make a real dent in our results.
James, you obviously have the fifth-year option with Trayvon, but just with a guy like him who had injuries this year, how do you evaluate, and assess that and the path kind of going forward with him?
Yeah, I think that's fair to ask. The thing that I really appreciate in watching Trayvon move is how much he loves this place, how much he loves his teammates. That just seeps out of his soul. And those are the types of people that you want to align yourself with. It's the type of players and that we want to make sure that are still in our building moving forward. And I know, obviously, dealing with injury, that's never easy for a player to tough through those types of things, especially when it's coming with a wrist and a knee simultaneously. It's not something that's easy, or many would be willing to put themselves at potentially risk for looking worse. And you wouldn't hold that against him. It's not something that's ever considered as long-term concern or anything of that nature. In fact, it's something that you would prop him up for, right? The willingness to step into that despite being sort of an adverse situation or your body's not feeling its best. That's stuff that he should take real pride in, and he's certainly somebody that we want to make sure we align ourselves with moving forward.
Playing with DJ Dallas at the last minute, making contributions,
Yeah.
and of course the move for the wide receiver in the middle of the year, and so many guys being out and still having success. Does it make it easy for you to sell guys not only with the 53 but the practice squad to prepare themselves to be the next man up?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know that it comes down to a sale job as much as it is like. Think back to a lot of our conversations last spring into the summer, and it's going to be really important, I think, for us as a leadership group to make sure our words align with action. And, you know, when we say something, we stand on it. And when it comes to injuries over the course of the season, I think that provides opportunities to showcase depth and agility and development. And I think you mentioned a few guys, but there's a long list of folks that sort of shined when those opportunities present itself. There's a long list of examples of our coaching staff adjusting in real time. And, you know, that stuff, they all deserve a ton of credit for that. And, you know, the attrition that takes place over the natural course of a season is real, and you got to prepare for it. And you don't get to 13 wins unless you have chemistry, you have folks that can step in when voids are created, and you don't feel a massive drop-off. And I think that showed itself time and time again in a number of different ways. And, you know, having guys who start the season on a practice squad and end up starting for you by end of season, that's another sign of some really high-quality opportunities that will present itself even when an injury isn't what triggers it. So I think those actions speak louder than any sale job that I could do for anybody, and we'll certainly let players and representation point to those as examples of why they should be here.
Is that what culture really is, though? Everyone buying in? And
Undoubtedly. The words on the wall, the words that you speak, that's one thing, but being able to live and breathe all that is a totally different dynamic. And, you know, I got to give a ton of gratitude and appreciation for Shad and his family for entrusting Tony, myself, and Liam to step into these roles. I got to give a ton of gratitude and appreciation to the players for embracing us and buying in. Obviously, Liam setting the message, setting the tone, holding the standard firm, them embracing that and putting it into action as players is something that isn't easy to garner, isn't easy to produce, and that takes time. It takes time to build that trust. It takes time to showcase what you're saying is actually what you're living, and yeah, that's a real part of it for sure. But certainly look forward to pressing that restart button, because you got to recreate, you got to iterate. It's never going to be the exact same that it was, and we look forward to that challenge.
Liam, what's the hardest thing about getting the boulder back up the hill and maybe even further than you got it this year?
I don't know. You know, I gotta look at what those exact, I guess you could call it bullet points would be to get that over the hump. I think that we had a lot of great energy towards the end of the season in terms of, like, I don't know if a lot of guys were just like, oh my gosh, let's get this season over with type thing, to where the schedule, the routine, the support staff, the operation, the routine, the practices, it felt like it was going in the right direction in terms of sustainability throughout maybe a few more weeks. So looking at that, I think that it was on par with being able to continue moving forward. It was just some critical moments, obviously, and plays in a game that you got to be able to make. And, you know, those are things that you end up having to build upon and try to recreate in the off season, right? So like when we do situational masters and we go through our off season plan and recreating maybe some of those moments that we ended up losing in, right? Obviously the end of half, like great execution to get us into a position to make, hey, we just didn't make the kick. Like it is what it is, right? So, all right, let's go put them back in that situation in the spring and continue to recreate moments to create positivity, to have that muscle memory to go and make those plays when the time comes.
James, how would you describe the growth and production of Brenton Strange this year?
I'd point back to really our intent with what we did in the offseason program, which was when we first arrived, there were players that were long-standing starters in the wide receiver room, in the tight end room. Our belief that in Brenton and others in the wide receiver room that they, with opportunity, could take a step. Certainly excited now where we're seated to be able to say that that was a sound decision. Now, at the same time, Brenton did his part to bring that to life. Rich, in conjunction with our offensive staff, helped bring that to life. And obviously at this point in time feel like he's someone that we can really rely on moving forward, some version of a security blanket in the passing game, and can make things happen when the ball is in his hands, but as a run blocker is certainly somebody that can dent the line of scrimmage and set the tone. And so at this point in time certainly feel like that vision being brought to life through him, through others that surround him is really cool to have seen unfold.
Do you expect Brenton, can I follow up on Brenton?
Yeah, sure.
Do you expect to have contract negotiations with Brenton and Parker? You could now, I mean, get them early and maybe get them cheaper.
You know what? I think we'll take the time here. Obviously, it's all preliminary discussions at this point in time, and probably premature to truly dive in. Got to wait until we hit that full 3-year mark with a new league year. But nonetheless, I think both Brenton and Parker are people that we feel like align strongly with how we want to move forward.
Liam, do you, part of the success is potentially losing some guys? Do you anticipate that you may have to replace? It sounds like Brent has an opportunity in Cleveland, and I think Campanile this morning maybe down in Miami. What's your view on that? How do you approach that? Mm-hmm. And do you expect some changes, I guess?
I mean, you know, both those guys did a great job this year and were in their first years doing those roles and responsibilities. And so anytime you have success, you're going to have people come and call and knock on the door. And those guys have earned some of those interviews and opportunities. Whether those happen this year, down the line, I think both of those guys are, future head coaches at some point. And so that just comes along the territory. It comes with it. It's the bittersweetness of our profession. You want to continue to give people opportunities to grow while also protecting your product and what you do here and how you operate. So it's definitely a fine line that you walk, but it's opportunity, and they've earned those opportunities to interview for those positions, and you try to help them along that process as much as possible. So do I anticipate losing those guys or many coaches, from the staff? Not sure. I'm not sure what that looks like. That ultimately isn't my decision. And, but we have to be prepared. We have to think about what are the next steps if those things were to happen. And those are conversations that, we're having right now.
About 5 minutes left. James Van Land and that left tackle specifically, what did you see from him to say you're comfortable extending him for that money?
Yeah, I think I'll zoom out for a quick second. Right now we are in a position where everybody that played for us on the offensive line this season is coming back next season, and that was a big part. The continuity at that position group in particular is one that makes more sense than any other. It's a necessity. It's never one individual that tilts the scales there as much as it is just the collective effort as a whole, and being able to insert guys throughout the course of a season and not feel some significant drop-off in the collective output is a really important piece. In Los Angeles, that was, if there was ever a thing offensively that could stand in our way or be a debilitator, it was when we had injuries at offensive line. And to ensure that the quality of depth existed there is something that we prioritize, that we're always going to make sure we protect, so that knowing the natural course of a season, in particular across the offensive line, which tends to get more injuries than most other positions, has got to be something that we ensure we guard against. And Cole obviously getting the opportunity to step in at multiple spots, obviously 4 out of the 5, but then settle in at left tackle and really face some of the best rushers in the NFL. And doing his part in particular in pass protection was a real piece to that that puzzle and the reasoning, as well as projecting into what the free agent landscape looked like and where he might fall in the crop that was upcoming, and the depth of that group as a whole, and trying to map out what that could look like.
Quick follow-up on that, Bakari, 2 back injuries in the last 4 games. How big of a concern is that moving forward?
Yeah, it's not a notable concern based off of our initial understanding. It's something that can be addressed, won't impact long-term standing or anything of that nature, but thanks for asking.
Both of you, I know that it's only been a couple of days, but first year in this role, what's the biggest thing that you've learned you'll take away from this season?
You want to hit it? Okay. You know, I think communication remains to be something that is an area I feel like needs to be improved upon personally. It's always a point of emphasis, but it's never a place where I feel like I've done my part, and I continue to seek feedback in that regard internally, obviously, from different departments, as well as I think about how Tony and Liam and I operate in conjunction with each other. Where it lacks, it's very straightforward. Negativity tends to fill that void, and I got to protect against that and do my part to ensure it's an area that I continue to assess and improve upon. And that stuff's never easy, but just like I mentioned at the beginning of the press conference, it's always ongoing, and certainly want to put a lot of emphasis in that as we approach this offseason.
Okay, three more. How different do you feel this coming offseason will be procedurally, timing-wise, scouting-wise, as far as all of that's concerned, versus this last offseason, coming in kind of trying to figure everything out of that?
Yeah, that's a fun question because, again, like I said, this time last year was still focused on my roles and responsibilities in Los Angeles, wasn't considering what an opportunity in Jacksonville was going to look like. So to be able to have some version of a head start in that process and understand our team at a really deep level is extremely helpful and extremely beneficial. The fact that the timeline of just the scouting cycle remaining consistent up to this point, I'm in a very similar place that I was this time last year with the draft, with pro free agency. The piece that is obviously sped up is now the understanding of our current roster, and not being forced to sort of dive into that with very little nuances and depth to it. So I think that's a really helpful piece in order to make some decisions. Now procedurally, we incorporated new functions and mechanisms that our scouting staff and our coaching staff didn't necessarily have experience with in the past. So obviously those will be new wrinkles that we'll work in, and looking forward to seeing those unfold in real time. But as far as my personal operation, it's very similar in terms of the draft and free agency. It's just an accelerated understanding of who we are as the Jacksonville Jaguars that is now in play.
James, you mentioned the experience that you saw from the rookies. How do you kind of project growth and expanded roles for them going forward as you kind of look at the makeup of the roster this year?
Yeah, I think naturally you anticipate that. You can plan for it, and in some ways by making sure that those runways are available to them. I think it may be a misconception that there was endlessly that the players we drafted in Los Angeles were immediate contributors as rookies, where that wasn't truly the case. Now at the end, when you think back to Puka Nacua obviously having a significant role as a rookie, and then Jared Verse and Braden Fisk having significant roles as rookies, that can maybe overshadow what the sort of year-over-year outlook was. Like Kyron Williams and Quentin Lake, who both received contract extensions this year, did not play as rookies. They were both injured that season. So I think that's probably a fair representation of what now as the Jacksonville Jaguars, and having seen multiple rookies have injuries surface, that you can think back to like, oh, wait. And also, as I consider who took jumps in their third year or now fourth year with the Jacksonville Jaguars and were quick to rush to an assumption around whether or not that was some version of a hit or a miss, everybody's on different timelines, and certainly have a ton of optimism around what the roles look like moving forward, and look forward to seeing that come to life. And obviously, we get a whole offseason before that'll show itself, but feel like we're in a good place.
Last offseason, there was a goal of raising the floor of the roster. Is there a tangible goal yet for what this offseason needs to be?
Yeah, I think so. And, at the end of the day, we're still in preliminary discussions around what our approach, our process, our decisions could look like heading into the real parts of this offseason. We'll take the time, and Liam, Tony, myself, being able to break away, just the three of us, we'll invest energy with our coaching staff, our support staff, our scouting staff, mid to late February, and really have a firm grip on that. But at this point, we're all sort of bringing those thoughts to the surface and then beginning to map that out in a more strategic and formalized manner.
Coach James, thank you, sir.
Thank you all for the coverage.
Thanks, guys.